All right, thank you for coming. Tonight, Maggie Dietz, Todd Hearon, and January Gill are reading. So Maggie Dietz is the author of the poetry collections That Kind of Happy and Perennial Fall, which won New Hampshire's Jane Kenyon Award for Outstanding Book of Poetry. Other awards include the Grolier Poetry Prize, the George Bennett Fellowship at Phillips Exeter Academy, as well as fellowships from the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown, Massachusetts, and the New Hampshire State Council on the Arts. Dietz is the former assistant poetry editor of Slate magazine and was the founding director of the Favorite Poem Project, an initiative created by former U.S. Poet Laureate Robert Pinsky. Dietz's poems have appeared widely in journals such as Poetry, Plowshares, the Threepenny Review, Harvard Review, and the Adroit Journal. She is Associate Professor of English and Creative Writing at the University of Massachusetts Lowell. Todd Hearon is the author of 3 collections of poems, Strange Land, No Other Gods, and Crows in Eden, the novella De Geese See God, and the solo album Border Radio. He received the Penn New England Discovery Award, the Friends of Literature Prize presented by Poetry Magazine and the Poetry Foundation, the Rumi Poetry Prize presented by Arts and Letters, and the Campbell Corner Poetry Prize presented by Sarah Lawrence College. He has held fellowships from the University of Texas in Austin and Dartmouth College to Frost Place in Franconia, New Hampshire. He lives and teaches in Exeter, New Hampshire. January Gill is an associate professor at Salem State University and the author of Rewilding, published in 2018, Misery Islands, published in 2014, and Underlife, published in 2009, all published by Carey Press. From 2012 to 2018, she served as the executive director of the Massachusetts Poetry Festival and currently serves on the boards of AWP and Montserrat College of Art. Her poems and articles have appeared in the New York Times Magazine, the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day series, American Poetry Review, Green Mountains Review, Poetry, and Sierra Magazine, among others. Her poem At the Rededication of the Emmett Till Memorial was a co-winner of the 2022 Allen Ginsberg Poetry Awards, sponsored by the Poetry Center at Passaic County Community College. The recipient of fellowships from the Massachusetts Cultural Council, Cave Canem, and the Barbara Deming Memorial Fund, O'Neill was the 2019 to 2020 John and Renee Grisham Writer-in-Residence at the University of Mississippi, Oxford. She lives with her 2 children in Beverly, Massachusetts. So thanks so much for coming. One last note is we just ask you to silence your cell phones and please wear your mask for the duration of the reading. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to take this off to read, and I cannot sicken anybody because I had the COVID like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, maybe. You're safe. Finally, it came from me. Okay, I'm going to read a little shorter than I planned to, just because we're starting so late, and this, you've been very patient. I appreciate that. So I'm reading, my books are getting old, which is what happens with my books. They get old and then eventually there's a new one. So I'm working on the next one, and I'm just going to read from that book. This book takes up aspects of the Persephone and Demeter myth as a way to explore more contemporary experiences of mothers and daughters and hells. So you'll sort of see how that works. And 5 of the poems I'm going to read tonight, which is the bulk of the reading, don't be scared, are titled Metamorphosis. And that's a little series. They'll be sprinkled throughout the book, not in a row, but I'll read them consecutively. This is Persephone's Friends. When her story tore open, they ghosted. Dandelion gossamer, ducklings paddling hell for leather into the cover of cattails. Then they biked into the blue afternoon of average adolescence. At home, they sulked in clothes-strewn bedrooms and griped about setting the table. They unfollowed her on Instagram and blocked her cell. They cropped her out of images and didn't say her name, except to agree she never really was that great friend, and maybe she was asking for it braless in that tank top. Metamorphosis. Because I liked to bring the outside in, I had on my desk a painted bowl with 3 stones in it like eggs in a nest. I liked to brood over them, to thumb their surfaces and think. They were so gentle, a kind of pure potential. One afternoon, you made me monstrous, ghost of all you couldn't control. Looking for anything to lob, you lifted the largest as I stood across the room. Later, I iced my collarbone and restored the barren stones to the world. Metamorphosis. The bluish underside of your left arm is from wrist to elbow latticed with white and pink lines. The madness of their overlapping is like a game of pickup sticks. The stakes are graver, the lines a ladder, leading to the next time you need to try to get the hell out of you. The little windows between the lines recall the times we'd draw with sidewalk chalk, teetering hopscotches the length of the whole block, and throw pea gravel from under the gutters to show us how far we could go on the Sisyphean path to starting over again. Never long enough to make the game go on forever. Metamorphosis. Now and never often enough, or bright or light or dark enough, this need to change the filter, find the right who in the mirror with the right hair. The trip to Walgreens, always an emergency, something semi-permanent to stave off changes cut in stone. Your roots are ravaged, stunned by bleach, so the hair hardly grows now, and short shed bits get wet and stain the countertop with stubborn threads of red and blue and black and red again. In the sunlight, which you keep from your dark room with ice blue strip lights streaking like a scar along the ceiling, I have seen a halo of prismatic fire flaring from the tips of your split ends. Metamorphosis. Sometimes you seem to want to make something dazzling from your rage. You knew I liked it, the antique mirror I bought at a dusty storefront run by sisters. You grunted when you swung it from the wall and flung it to the floor. For an instant, bits of slivered glass fell up like inverted rain, and then it was over. Sure enough, it cut me, and it took years to pull the crumbs of glass out of the wool. It's the last metamorphosis poem. Metamorphosis. Because the face you saw was not the one you wanted, you made with a bright steel brad 2 cockeyed holes in the skin between your brows and bled all over the barbell you tried to ram through them, half laughing in the tick-tock I saw later at the way the silver stud ends skewed diagonal. You told me that the marks were acne scars, but fessed up the day you used a safety pin to stab the web-like membrane connecting upper gum to lip and asked if you could keep it as if the mutilation were a kitten or a frog. What was I supposed to say? That I like you the way you came? I did what any broke-down woman would and drove you to a place called Pierced Utopia at the Saugus Mall, where a human with a spangled face plunged a needle through your perfect nose. I'll read one more poem in four or five little parts called Cusp. So it's springtime now in the book. Cusp. Thank God it's March. Thank God it's raining. The water gnawing the last crusts of snow in the yard where a lone crocus parts its lips. Just days now until a chorus of color will welcome you back, the cold ground greening to meet you and pansies blinking up from the mulch. Yesterday, I woke to find the branch tips lit with green and purple flames. Earlier each day now, the window frames the dawn. I see your face in every square of the calendar the sun pins to the floor. I'm baking bread with flour from last year's wheat. I've washed your favorite sheets and filled your room with hothouse tulips. I know you'll come, but when? A late frost mocks the sparks of my insatiable impatience. Soon enough, the irises will don their ball gowns underneath the elm. Soon enough, the hyacinths will quiver clustered bells. Inevitable angel, hasten home. Spring after spring after spring, the frogs outsmart the underworld. Evenings on the screened-in porch, I hold my breath and listen for their song.
I never like to follow Maggie Dietz in a poetry reading, that is, ever. But thank you so much for being here at this poetry mecca, the Grolier. I've been coming here since the early 90s, just to stand in this room and look around in awe. And back in those days, I was new to Boston, and I never had any idea that one day I'd be standing here reading some poems. So thank you, James, and the rest of the Grolier staff for having me tonight. I'm going to be reading from my brand new book called Crows in Eden. The subject of the book is what's called in this country the sundown town, which is an area, a community, a town, a city, a part of a city that has been made and maintained all white, many times through violent measures, but not always through violent measures. The Eden of the title is an imagined amalgam of hundreds of sundown towns that I read about over a period of about 5 years. It's in the southeast corner of Tennessee, in a little copper mining community called Copper Hill, but in this book it's Eden, and it was just over the mountains from where I grew up in Western North Carolina. This is the first time I've read an extended portion of the book in public, so thank you again, Grolier. The opening poem is a long sequence. It's been difficult to excerpt some pieces of it, but I will be doing that. And we'll see how it goes. Crows in Eden, Chorix. I should say also that the piece first premiered as an oratorio for multiple voices. So chorix means choral, and you'll hear different voices throughout. Chorix. There are no shadows in this town, white on white. The winter sun wipes down the walls of memory, seeing through us. Our figures cast filmy resemblances to stone, our ghosts substantial as a smoke that flits in dream, casting no shadow. The past, a dream we awakened from as children and told to go into the obliterating light, seeing no evil, white on white. A smell of dreamy smoke upon our clothes, odor of charring flesh we couldn't scratch off the niggling sense it was our own. And when we held our hands up to the sun, bloodless transparencies, our eyes unsaw all they had done, no memory, our histories ever at one removal from a tone. The past won't lie down, it won't stand still. It looks at us with the livid accusing eyes of one long killed, who knows death is the delusion of the living and the thing that can't be filled, the unmarked grave in the corner of the field that abuts our property. The broken line of barbed wire strangling the headless posts in time is the beginning. The past sets out from always, over our scalped lawns and hanging gardens, the keys to our locked bedrooms in its hands. The past stands over us in generation, in the act of love or appetite, imagining our women, its women, our men, its men, and it itself, our children. The past stands ready to unfold and lift them into what we thought lay buried in the past. What lies in the unmarked grave? Who was it planted there? The afterlife of stories. Johnson's tractor turned up Skull last summer, called in the authorities, but found no body. Shipped it off to Atlanta for a forensics team down there to poke around. Came up male, negroid nasal features, 100 years, give or take some in the ground, good teeth, death by undetermined trauma. No leads, of course, at this stage, case shut down. Well, short time after that, you wouldn't imagine, all over that field, wherever Johnson sunk a spade, dropped harrow, them skulls start cropping up like popcorn, all kinds, men, women, and children. I seen him one day stacked up in his shed, 50 or so, just like a bunch of empty-headed bowling balls ogling at you from the other side. Authorities come back, get busy with more digging, still no bodies. They say they go back pretty far, some settlement or cemetery, something, long about the time of the First World War. Johnson, I say you got in the game too late. Think of the killing you could have made selling grave plots. He chuckles, scratches his speckled head, looks out over the land. I reckon. But what gets me is, where are the bodies? White on white, the winter sun spills its thin kerosene across the sticks of frosted fields at dawn and sets the scene ablaze. Where in the light that gives no heat, the ghosts rise nomadic in the tendril steam, shimmer in the dazzle as if pressed to speak, and bleed before our eyes to blinding chrome. History is elsewhere, in the choirs and coffered dust of newsprint, oily coils of microfiche, locked files in 100 small town heritage societies. Black on white, what has been history speaks its good-toothed truth in an incendiary tongue, denied by the white old to the white unstoried young. What lies in the unmarked grave? Where are all the bodies? Johnson's papa knew a thing or two, but ne'er let on a word. At this point, the sequence drives back in time into 1919 in Eden, Tennessee, the evening of which a triple lynching of young Black men. Following that, the expulsion of the entire African-American community, 50 people disappeared overnight. I'll skip that part and move right into the section following. They fled in the night, the most of them with only what could be managed in a gunny sack, left the beds, the basins, kitchen chairs and table, supper on the stove, left cold, left the land. That land, it was my great-grandfather's dream. One rocky acre of earth to call his own, purchased after he was slave. I tell you, son, after that night, he never was the same. Burnt the 2-bit cabins, burnt the school, the church dynamited, cut the leashes on the hounds, cut the hoses on the fire truck, scoured the jail. And in another town, a man was found guilty of rape and strung up by a band of women who screamed with devilish delight. And the county was declared white overnight. Never would be the same, who could be, just drifted after, couldn't never hold a job, turned mean, city to city, town to town, the same. Is how my family ended up in Tulsa. Field sitting fallow, farmhouse empty, apple on the tree, hang full and ripe. The deed passed over in a year to the white neighbor who'd paid the taxes on it all that time. A scorch on the earth, a hanging tree, whistle of wind where was a washing song, an empty hoop, a button for an eye. In time is the beginning. And out west, they torched another Chinatown, middle of the night, 500 shacks, let run who could, the smell of burning flesh for a mile in each direction down the tracks. We've all got stories. Refused service, refused a room. You don't see me filing for psychological damages for being called white trash all my life. What are they complaining about? Everyone I know has got it hard, harder than most. That's the thing about you people. Why don't you try a little empathy? There's a black man in the White House, for Christ's sake. Can't we move on? This music floated by me on the water, where the damned Ocoee River meets the green, obliterating haze of highest summer, and ceased in that impenetrable sheen. Deeper, farther down, the river answered, with a furious insistence, all its own refuse and grim refusals in a ballad plucked on a banjo made of minstrels' bones. That's the thing about the past, oh baby, sugar babe, you can't get past. That's the thing about that carry on, oh honey pie, it carry on. Sticks and railroad ties piled up along the old Ocoee, not a trace of the burned man in the heaps of ash whitewater rafters leave among the banks. Citizens of Eden never ask what happened to the bodies, what was done in Johnson's field beyond the almost buried tracks that lead nowhere anymore. The weathered sign that said, "Don't let the sun go down on you" here 50 years before came down. But still no black man ever sets foot in Eden, where even the winter crows are white on white. No memory, a century. Stop there. Thank you so much.
My mouse constantly gets stuck on my hoop earrings. So annoying. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Todd. It's such a pleasure hearing your work. Todd, there's a website that my daughter refers to whenever we go through towns that we're unfamiliar with, and she keeps track of sundown towns or places that are considered, they were still operate like sundown towns, so that's still a thing. So I'm in Massachusetts too. Well, thank you for having me. Thanks, James, and to the Grolier staff. I haven't been here in a few years, so it's nice to be with people. And thank you for coming out and wearing a mask and all that good stuff. I apologize because coming from Beverly, I really did not plan the traffic as I should have. Anyway, I think I'll just read a few poems, but the first one is a longer one. And this is my poem called Brave. It's in a few sections. It's in 5 sections. So when I got married September 15th, 2001. So a few days away from 9/11. And I lived here with my fiance, and we had to drive overnight to Norfolk, Virginia, where I was from. So this poem documents that journey, but it jumps back and forth in time. Talk about my daughter and a raccoon. Let's see. And the last stanza is only 3 lines long. It's 5 sections. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. Brave. A thin layer of ash fine debris, probably bone, coated the windshield as we passed exit after exit for the Garden State Parkway. We took detours and back roads while police blocked every on-ramp, blue lights pulsing. Officers in yellow hazard vests stood next to their squad cars as we drove past midnight. My soon-to-be husband, mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and me in a 1992 Grand Marquis on our way to Virginia. On the radio, nothing but news and static. All of us silent, sleepy, edgy, uncertain, both absent and present on an empty highway driving past New York City. I would never tell my daughter that some nights I lie awake listening for the raccoon I know is in the attic, but pretend isn't there. The scratching, the heavy scampering, she hears it too. If he were here, Daddy would check things out. If he were here, Mommy would not feel so lonely. We pretend to be brave, bang on the walls, play loud music to scare it away. Pray it does not have kids. Marriages fail. There is no one else to go up there and get the little fucker. On our day in court, my lawyer was late, so the judge moved our case to the afternoon docket. We sat for hours, you on the left side, me on the right, listening to failure after failure, the quick dissolve of marriages into oblivion. I remember thinking, Hallmark doesn't make a card for this. The moment when the judge calls your name and uses words such as irreconcilable, broken, and final, and a swell. No, a surge of tears breaks as the judge uncouples us. You cried too. Neither of us looked at the other or spoke. When I turned around, you were gone. You had left the building. Before we arrived at the hotel, we took engagement photos in our wrinkled clothes. And before that, we watched the sunrise as we crossed the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. And before that, we listened to Howard Stern around 5 a.m. broadcast live, trying to find the right words, any words. And before that, you took the wheel from your brother so he could get some sleep. And before that, you held my hand as we rode in the back seat. And before that, we were not allowed on the Garden State Parkway. And before that, we stopped for gas, sandwiches, checked the check engine light somewhere in Connecticut. And before that, there was a toll on the Tobin Bridge. And before that, I was on the phone with the maid of honor who would ride the bus from Texas to Virginia to arrive by Saturday. I thought she was crazy. And before that, I was on the phone with my father who said, be careful, and I love you. And before that, no flights were allowed out of Logan Airport or anywhere. And before that, I said yes. And before that, you said yes. And before that, I asked, should we go through with the wedding? I would never tell my daughter, male raccoons have no part in raising their young. So, here's a poem for my son who's about to go off to college. Hoodie. A gray hoodie will not protect my son from rain, from the New England cold. I see the partial eclipse of his face as his head sinks into the half dark and shades his eyes. Even in our quiet suburb with its unlocked doors, I fear for his safety. The darkest child on our street and the empire of blocks. Sometimes I do not know who he is anymore, traveling the back roads between boy and man. He strides a deep stride, pounds a basketball into wet pavement. Will he take his shot, or is he waiting for the open mouth orange rim to take a chance on him? I sing his name to the night, ask for safe passage from this borrowed body into the next, and wonder who could mistake him for anything but good. So, a few years ago, occasionally, people would say, I look like our former First Lady, Michelle Obama, that one. I don't see it. On being told I look like FLOTUS, New Year's Eve party 2014. Deep in my biceps, I know it's a compliment. Just as I know this is an all Black people look-alike moment. So I use the minimal amount of muscles to crack a smile. All night he catches sight of me or someone like me standing next to the deconstructed cannoli and empty bottles of Prosecco. And in that moment, I understand how little right any of us have to be whomever we are. The constant tension of making our way in this world on hope and change. You're working your muscles to the point of failure, Michelle Obama once said about her workout regimen. But she knows we wear our history in our darkness, in our patience. A compliment is a compliment. This I know, just as the clock will always strike midnight and history repeats. This is how I can wake up the next morning and love the world again. So I'll read two more. New work. So this one just came out in the Bennington Review, or at least it came out a while ago, but the hard copy came in, so I was really excited. It's fun to read new work and sort of find that rhythm. You know it. See, in the other poem I'm not reading, I was going to sing, so I'm sparing you that one. No worries. Woman swallowed by a python in her cornfield. This is a true story. Inside every woman is a snake. Some think I'm a hoax or an oddity, rarer than winning Powerball or struck by lightning. Everything has a form, even doubt. Think of me as someone you've met in a dream. Green stalks shade the sun, keep me hidden from the villagers, the non-believers. To find me, you must enter me. Oh, that your body fits into my body makes us unholy. Let me press my mouth to your scar, run my tongue along your flesh so I can taste how you wound. The wild boars patrolling the edges won't save you. Footprints, flashlight, machete, slippers, all that I've left behind. Inside every snake is a woman. That's the part of me I love the most. Reticulated constrictor, word made flesh, time unfolding, lore or legend. I am done telling the kinder story. I'm a myth of my own making. Part my snake flesh and you will find me intact, clothed as I was when I visited the corn. Think of me as the gift you're unsure how to open. And so in 2019, 2020, I spent academic year at the University of Mississippi, Oxford, and it was an amazing time. It was not what I expected, and then it was exactly what I expected. So the thing I didn't expect is that I fell in love. And somewhere on there, my boyfriend is watching from Mississippi. So this is for Kate. Mississippi season. He says I hold my mind well, likes that I put the kids first and have never tried drugs. The lilt in his southern drawl intoxicates me. He likes not being able to have all of me, makes him want me more. Broken finds broken, I say, so when he kisses my neck along my clavicle down to my breast, I break all over again after a drought of no kissing, no touch. How not being chosen can dim any light. For years, I told myself a story I could live with, thought of myself a kind of carnival fish in a plastic bag floating in my own still water, waiting to be loved. Dumb luck that someone flips a red ring on the mouth of a glass jar, and just like that, I am kissing again, kissing a man so luminous, so beautifully flawed, I can barely look at him. And my mind, done with all its stories, turns to the carnal as I rim the hinge of his lips with my tongue and dive into this quenching. Thank you.
All poets, another round of applause. It'd be super helpful if you stack your chairs against the walls, and we'll be selling books and the poets will be signing them, so please watch
Thank you.